Okay, I think we're getting ready to get started here. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Kelly. I'm the Client Services Executive here at Oscar Host. So I just want to welcome you to our first and what we hope will be a series of webinars about the Oscar EMR. So today we're just going to be focusing on the basics of EForms, what they are, how they work, and what you can do with them, also where you can get them. So we're going to be doing just a demonstration going through how to use these EForms, how to get them, and then at the end of this, we're probably going to be doing about an hour long, and then with the first half an hour focused on just showing you how to use the EForms, and then there'll be a question and answer period at the end. There should be asking a question button in the top of your, maybe top left of your screen, and that's where you can ask your questions. There's also a chat built into this this program that you can use, and Jordan Visco, our CEO, will be able to answer questions in there as well. Okay, so what are EForms? EForms are essentially custom web pages that a user can add into Oscar, and they allow a high degree of customization. You can access EForms from a patient's eChart, their master file, as well as the appointment screen. So I'll show you how to access it in each of those places. From the appointment screen here, you can set it up in your preferences so that you can have a link on the appointment to an EForm, and you do that just by going to your preferences here. And then right where it says EForms to display on the appointment screen, you can select an EForm that you want to use. And then you'll just click Update. And now you have a link to that EForm right here. From the eChart, you can access an EForm by right where it says EForms here, and then you have to click the plus icon to add a new EForm. Then you can just select the EForm that you want to use from the list here. Then from the patient's master file, you can access EForms right here where it says Add EForm. You can also view current EForms. These are EForms that you have saved by clicking on the current EForms link right here. These are ones that you've already filled out for the patient, and then you've saved it to their chart. And you can access that same place from the eChart just by clicking on EForms here. You can also search for EForms that you have in this text box here in the eChart. So you could type in lab requisition, and you can see I then found an EForm right here, and I could click on it to open up that EForm. So there's a few different types of EForms. I like to kind of think of them a little bit separately because there's really a lot of variables in EForms that you can play with. So you can have a basic type of EForm where you just take a standard paper form, you make an image out of that, and then you will add in HTML components so that you can have text boxes and check boxes and the like. And I'll show you an example of what that would look like. This is really the most standard type of EForm. So you're probably familiar with this. Here's a LifeLabs lab requisition, and someone has scanned in a LifeLabs form. Then the HTML component is adding in these text boxes, and with these text boxes you can have them pre-fill with information from a patient's chart. And then you can have these different check boxes, and really there's a lot of other functionality you could add to a form, but really these are the most basic type. So you'd fill out this EForm, check off what type of lab test you wanted to run, and then you would just submit at the bottom. Another type of EForm is really like more of a calculator. So I have this ADHD rating scale EForm right here. And this one's quite a bit different than the last one we looked at because, for one, it doesn't actually have a background image. This is only HTML in here. And rather than being, you know, a requisition, this is a calculator, you're going to still have the patient information getting pre-filled into this for you. But then you're going to come down here and you're going to select all these different options as far as, you know, someone's, in this case, their propensity to have ADHD. And as you go through and select these options down here, there's programming in this form that will use the options to give you a rating. So after selecting all those options there, I then can select an age here, and then there's a button here to calculate the total. So I click that, and it looks at all my selections. There's values behind all these selections, and then it runs an algorithm to give me this calculation here. So this is another type of EForm that is commonly used, and it's really just an example of some of the things you can do with forms. You don't have to be restricted to your standard paper form format. You can really go in a different direction and have it totally HTML and have a lot going on in the background of the form that you're not really seeing, just having it do work for you. Same as the last form, though, you just save this by clicking the Submit button once you're done, or you could print it as well. Another type of EForm that I want to show you is really the letter generated EForm right here. And again, this is a very non-traditional form, and it shows you kind of more of what you can do with EForms. This is really just an example of the customization and the flexibility you have with EForms. So this EForm, at its most basic use, is really just a letter generator or a word processor. You can come in here and you could, you know, start typing up a letter. That's its most basic use. You could it also has these buttons on the side which are pulling in information from a patient's chart, and you can set up a letterhead. It's really quite a handy EForm. Most people, I think, would have this EForm in their Oscar. It's one of the ones that's usually preloaded with Oscar. But what that one really just shows you is that an EForm is a web page. Anything you can see on a web page, you can essentially program into an EForm. It's just a matter of you know, how much time you want to put into creating that EForm. And the EForms have access to pretty much everything in Oscar. They use, to pull in patient information, they use what are called tags. And there's actually a place where you can see where those tags are, so you can see what kind of information you can pull into Oscar. And I'll be showing you that in a few minutes. So you know some of the basics about EForms, but you want to know how to find them. So there's really a really good resource for EForms in the website called oscarcanada.org. I'm just going to bring up that website for us here. It's really a great place for EForms. They're adding new ones all the time. They're updating EForms. And the website in general is a really good resource for anyone using Oscar. I highly recommend it. There's not just the EForms that you can get on this website. There's other add-ons for Oscar. There's a whole user group you can join and really join in the community with Oscar to share you know, learnings with other people and kind of learn from other people as well. So if you want to find EForms on this website, though, what you're going to do is you're coming to their main web page. You're going to go to where it says EForms. And then once you click on EForms, there's another button right here to actually start browsing through the list of EForms. Now, there's also all these details about what EForms are, and I just want to show you down here. If anyone is looking for the tags that I was referring to, which tell you what kind of information you can pull into Oscar or into the EForms from Oscar, there's a link right here. I'm just going to open it up, and it has a list of all the tags. These are just essentially code snippets that you put into your EForm. And when you put those into your EForm in the right place, it will pull in this different information here. So we have all sorts of tags here that pull in everything from a patient's name to a doctor's name and MS or practitioner number. Referral doctors, there's really a lot there. Also, if you have someone who is able to customize your OSCAR, you can actually build new tags. So this is just a list that comes with OSCAR, but you can always add more. So finding the EForms, though, you're going to click on this EForms button right here. And then you're getting to this page where there's EForms are set in different categories here. Some are organized by region, some are more organized by the type of EForm. You just have to kind of browse through everything to kind of see where things are. Obviously, if you're not in BC, you're probably not going to look at the BC specific ones. However, you know, in a lot of cases, if an EForm looks close enough to what you need, then you may find one outside of your region that can work for you, and maybe you just need to make small edits to it. Really, one of the good things about EForms is that you can get an EForm from this site, and if it is mostly going to work for you, but you need to make small changes to it, that's generally something that's not very difficult to do. So that's one of the places where you can get EForms. You can also actually download EForms from within OSCAR, and there's another repository that you can have access to. To access that, you'd have to go into your admin tab, and you're going to go into where it says Upload EForm. And from this page, you're going to go to where it says Download EForms right here. And then you can look through this list of EForms, and when you find one that you want to try out, you just click the Load EForm button. And now I have this EForm in the system. So that's a really simple way of getting EForms. But if the EForm you're looking for isn't in that list, you would be best to go look on the OSCAR Canada website to see if you can find it there. It's a little bit more complicated to add an EForm after downloading it from the OSCAR Canada website, so I'll show you how to do that. So back into the OSCAR Canada website, just let me pull that up. Oops. What happened there? Sorry about that. So what you want to do is you're going to look for the EForm that you want first. So I'm just going to go find one here. And now that I've found an EForm, sometimes there will be a preview of what the EForm looks like, but sometimes there won't be. In this case, I'm looking at this EForm, I read these instructions, and there's two files that I need for this EForm. There's an HTML file, and there's an image file, which in this case is a PNG. If I want to see what the EForm looks like prior to actually uploading it to OSCAR, I can just look at the image file, just download it, and you can take a look at it and say, okay, you know, is this going to work for me or not? Once you download both the files, you'll download the HTML and the PNG in this case. And there is cases where you're going to have more files, or sometimes you'll have a zip file, and I'll show you how to upload EForms in each different case. So you want to come into your Upload EForm section again. This is, again, accessible by going into the admin, and then going down to where it says Upload EForm. Then what you're going to do, in the case where you're not uploading a zip file, you're just going to upload the different components of the EForm. So in this case, we have the HTML component, and we had the PNG component. So the HTML component gets uploaded into this page, and you just do that by clicking the Browse, Then you're going to look for your EForm, and you're just going to select that HTML file, click open. You have to give it a name, so I'm just going to give it and if you want, you could add additional information that just shows up next to the name of the EForm. And you can also make it patient independent. If you check the patient independent box, what it will do is you can access this EForm from a patient's chart, but you can't save it to their chart. So that may be more useful for calculators or things that you don't actually want to save when you're done with them. So you click the upload button, and there's the EForm. However, if I click on it to preview it, it's actually missing some information, which is critical for its use. And you can see we got text boxes, but there's no image in the background, so that's a problem. So what we want to do next is we want to upload the image file, and we just click on this upload an image link right here. So here you can see all the images that I've already uploaded before. To add a new one, you're just going to, again, browse, find the appropriate file on your computer, click open, and then click upload. Now if we go back to that EForm from here, we can just take a look at it. We're still missing something, actually, and sometimes, you know, this may be the case. You'll try to get an EForm, and it requires extra files besides the HTML files and the image files. Sometimes there's JavaScript files or CSS files that are required, so you do have to upload those as well. In this case, that Java file was probably related to the print functionality or something like that, but now, any extra files that you do have with an EForm that aren't HTML files are getting uploaded with images. So if you have any JavaScript files or CSS files, they're just getting uploaded into this images section as well. You can see my list here. I've mostly got PNG files here, but you can see here's a JavaScript file right here. So everything that isn't a HTML file gets loaded into this list here. Now, sometimes when you download an EForm, it'll be coming in a zip file. In that case, what you have to do is you go to where it says Import EForm. And for importing an EForm, you're just going to be browsing your computer again to find that zip file that you downloaded. You'll click Open, and then you'll just click Import. So the zip file generally contains both the HTML and the image file, as well as any extra files that come along with it. So makes it for a little bit more of a simple step to upload the EForm. So those are really the two main places you're going to be getting your EForms. Another thing I recommend, though, as I mentioned earlier about the Oscar Canada website, there's more than just downloading EForms on their website. There's a lot of information, and there's the user list. If you join the user list, they actually are always putting out updates for EForms, and they'll put notifications in the user list, so you can find out about that. It may be a place that you can also talk with other Oscar users, and some people, maybe there's a bunch of people that want the same EForm, so if you request EForms, you may be able to get together as a group to have one built. You can also build your own EForms within Oscar, and I'll be showing you a little bit about doing that. And you can get other people to build them too. We build EForms, so if you wanted us to build them for you, you could do that. We do charge for those services, though. It's $75 an hour for building EForms that are more simple. If they're complicated ones, like a growth chart, that would be more expensive. It would be $100 an hour. Let's go into a little bit more about how the EForms work when you're using them. So I'm just going to open up Peter Pan's eChart here. We're going to start a new EForm. And actually, before I do continue, I do want to show one other thing that I think people would find useful about EForms. Some people I've talked to find the labels that are built into Oscar. They're not in the right format. They want to change around, or they want more information or less information in them. You can actually create an EForm that is a label. I have this one here that was provided to me actually by another doctor, and this one specifically set up to work with Dymo printers, but you can build them to work with other printers as well. And it's really quite a simple type of EForm. So really, again, just kind of showing you what is possible with EForms. Those labels, I think, are something that a lot of people would get use out of. So let's just open up a new EForm here. So as you can see with this EForm, we have patient information pre-filling into here. We can check off, what we want to do with this EForm. And then when you're going to save an EForm, you can add a subject to it. And the subject is useful because you can provide a little bit more information about what was going on with this EForm when you saved it. So what is this EForm? It's physiotherapy. So maybe you want to put a date on it, or you just want to put some other information. And then when you click the Submit button, it's going to get saved to this patient's chart. Let's reload the chart. So you can see the EForm now that I've saved it, and it's listed under the EForm section here, physiotherapy rec. And when I hover over it, you can actually see the subject that I put in, that more info. You can also see that there's a new line in the encounter notes area, or the toilet paper roll. And again, it's showing the name of the EForm and the subject that I had entered in. If you need to delete an EForm, you can do that just by clicking on the EForm's header right here. And then you can see all the EForms that you've saved to this patient's chart, and you can click the delete button to remove it. Let's say that I wanted to make an edit to this EForm. So if I click on it to open it up again, and I just have some extra information that I want to add in. When I submit it, it's not going to save over the old EForm. What it's going to do is it's going to create a new copy. And so in the case that you're really trying to replace it, you're going to save it, it's going to have this new copy, and then you're just going to go in and delete the old copy if you want. But it won't save over itself. So one other thing that might be useful when navigating EForms is that, say you've got a lot of EForms in here. Some clinics I know use quite a few. You can actually categorize them, and when they categorize them, you can see over on the side here, I got different groups of EForms. I've created a lab requisitions group, and when I click on them, then I'm only looking at my lab requisition EForms. You can set up these groups by going into this Edit Groups link right here. This just brings you right back into the Upload EForm page, and then you click on EForm Group, and you can add a group just by typing in the name up here, clicking Add Group, and then you can add EForms to each of the groups. So right now my Lab Requisitions group has 8 EForms in it. My new group doesn't have any, so if I want to add a new EForm to that new group, I'm just going to select it from this drop-down right here, and I'll click Add EForm to Group. And now it's showing that my new group has 1 EForm. If you want to remove it from the group, you just have to select the EForm down here and say Remove from Group. And now my group doesn't have any more EForms in it. So just a handy way of categorizing EForms and keeping your interface more manageable. Okay, so I'm just going to start going into some of the more detailed features of EForms, and some things that you may run into now and again is you'll upload an EForm. You'll have gotten it right from the website, the Oscar Canada website, and it doesn't work. You know, what happens sometimes is that when you're uploading EForms, there's certain characters like commas or quotation marks in the coding of EForms that can cause a problem when you're uploading them. So if you ever upload an EForm and it doesn't work right away, what you can do is you can actually edit the EForm. So for instance, I have this ambient story one, or actually I'm just going to do this heart function one that I've got, and I can edit it by clicking on the edit button on the right side there, and I can actually change the code right from here. Now, I'm not going to do anything really complicated here. What I'm going to do is I've got this EForm, the HTML component, sitting in my folder, and I need to open it up with Notepad. And now I can see the code here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy everything here. So I just do Control-A, and it copies the contents of the file. And then Control-C to actually copy. And then I'm going to go into this box here, do Control-A again, and I'm going to do Control-V to paste right over everything. So this is just something to try out if your EForm doesn't work automatically after you upload it, because what happens is the upload process, as I was saying, sometimes will strip out certain quotation marks or commas. They can cause a problem in certain areas of an EForm. And if you just copy it directly in, copy this code directly into the EForm, then you can fix that problem. So once you just copy it in, you'll click Save, and that will hopefully fix any problems you've had that were caused through the upload process. You can also rename the EForm from here. You can add the additional information again if you want. I wouldn't recommend changing the file name because that's probably going to break the EForm unless you change the file name by actually re-uploading a new file. Okay, so I'm going to show you some more actual basics about editing the HTML of a form. Because as I was saying, sometimes you'll get a form and maybe there's just something small you want to change about it. So what I'm going to show you is some of the kind of parts of the EForm that are easiest to change. So when you edit an EForm and you're looking at the code, I'll try to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. There's a lot going on here, and really you don't need to understand a lot of what's going on. What you do need to know is how to find the parts that you can understand. So a lot of this stuff at the top here is JavaScript, and you don't really want to touch it. But if you scroll down far enough, you're looking for the components of the HTML that kind of indicate where you are. So at the top of any HTML file, it's always going to say HTML. Then there's going to be a header section, and there's going to be a close to that header section somewhere down here. But what we're looking for is the body. And if I scroll down far enough, I'm going to find that. So let's just keep going here. Way down on this one. Okay, here we are. So there's the close of the header section and the start of the body section. So in the body section, you're going to have different divs, and divs are just sections of an HTML page. And there can be as many or as little divs as you want, but each of them can be managed separately with different placements, so you can control where on the page that section of information is going to show. But within the div, you're going to have a form, and then within the form, you're going to have inputs. So the inputs are the different components, whether they're text fields, checkboxes. In this case, these are actually hidden fields that are used for some complicated calculations in the EForm. but you're looking for the different types. So I want to find some of the text types. So I can see here's a div, and the div is really controlling a position. It's also controlling other aspects. In this case, it's just controlling the position. And you can see the position by looking right here. It says from the left side of the page, this div is going to be 227 pixels from the left, and it's going to be 108 pixels from the top. So if a certain field isn't in the right position, or if you want to move it, you can change that by changing this pixels. And it's not going to be you're just going to know where it's going to be placed, like, oh, I know that's going to be at 500 and 300. Most likely you're going to have to play with it and see what happens when you change that number. If the EForm has been developed in a way that is more user-friendly to change it, it will have descriptive names for the input fields. So within this div, I have an input field, and it's a text input field. And what is it for? It's for the current user's OHIP number. So I'm actually going to bring up what this EForm looks like. Oops. Actually, I'm not going to, because that will get rid of my window. But there should be a field that's indicating what the current user's OHIP number is. This is essentially going to pre-fill that information into that field. So it has some information about this field too. It's 97 pixels wide. Its font size is 12 pixels. It has a font type of Arial. So all this information should be, once you understand what the layout looks like, I mean, you know what Arial format is. You can look at that in Word if you don't know what that looks like. But then the tag is at the end here. The tag is what's pre-filling this box. So it says Oscar DB, so that's just indicating Oscar database, and it's using this tag, current user OHIP number, and that tag is related to bringing in whoever is opening up the EForm. If they have an OHIP number, it's going to pre-fill that number into this field. So if you want to change that with a different tag, you just need to find out what your tag is, and you can change it out here by putting the tag here. So it looks like we're almost into the question period right now, so I'm not going to go too much further into this. We are hoping to do more EForm tutorials like this that do go deeper into the HTML side of things. But for this period, I just wanted to show you some of the basics, and that you can edit these EForms and customize even existing ones that you've loaded into your system. So I'm hoping that everyone knows where the question and answer. I do have one question so far, but if you do have questions, it's right in the top of your screen, kind of on the left side. So one of the questions is to build the EForms yourself, you can go to the EForm generator. You can also build EForms right from scratch in HTML, but if you're just getting started, you probably want to use the EForm generator. So you can click on this EForm generator link, and what you need to do is generally most EForms do have an image background, so you're going to want to add your image in, and you're just going to click the expand button, and you can use an image that you've already loaded into Oscar, and that's again where you loaded images. For even existing EForm, you would be able to select that image right here. Then you're going to say what the orientation of the image is. You may have portrait or landscape ones. This one's a portrait. And so you've got your image of what your EForm looks like. Then you can give the EForm a name. In the case that you have gender checkboxes, you would just use this special case with gender checkboxes here. You check that off, and then you click this button right here for your male checkbox, and then click this button here for your female checkbox, and that way it will pre-fill the check on the appropriate box depending on the gender of the patient when you're opening up the EForm. You can add in signature boxes as well. What these are is just a place where you can use, say, your mouse to draw a signature. So it adds in an area into the EForm that you can draw with your mouse. And then the main part of doing the EForms, though, is to add in your input fields, your checkboxes, and what is getting pre-filled. So what you do here is you have options between single-line text inputs and multi-line text inputs and checkboxes. Once you select the option here, you're going to come down here and say, is this something that you're going to be typing into? In that case, it's going to be a custom text box. Is it something that you're going to be pre-filling from Oscar? If that's the case, you select from Oscar, and then there's a drop-down where you can select one of the tags. So if I wanted to bring in, say, the patient's name, I'm going to go here and I'm going to select in patient name right here. And then I'm going to find out where I want to put that. This is the ordering physician, but I'm just going to put it here. So I click the top left-hand corner, and then I just drag and I hold the click and let go to draw the box. So that will turn into an input box that's getting pre-filled with the patient's name. You can also bring in measurements from a patient's chart as well. So if you want to bring in a measurement, you're going to select the radio button for importing measurements. You're going to select which measurement that you're bringing in. So these are all the different IDs of measurements: height, weight, BP. And then you can select if you're wanting to pull in the value of the measurement, so how tall the person was, or you can also bring in the date that that measurement was done, or any comments that you added when you created that measurement. In the case of custom measurements, you would just go into this box where it says custom, and you would type in the ID of the measurement. And as long as you have that ID set up in Oscar as a custom measurement, then you'll be able to use it. When you're creating the EForm, you do have the option of setting the formatting of all your text boxes. So you can change the font family, the font style, whether it's bold or not, the font size, the alignment within the text box, so whether you want it left, centered, right. Most of the time, you're probably just going to want to keep a transparent text box so that it doesn't overwrite any kind of background image. But in the case that you do want to wash over the background image, say lines, you can select the white. And now, by default, the naming of these fields is going to be auto name, and it's going to increment for each field that you create. So the first field would be auto name 1. Then if I added more fields, it would be auto name 2, auto name 3. So when you go to edit the EForm, when I was showing you earlier the name of the EForm, you usually kind of want to have it descriptive. If you're making an EForm like this and you're just leaving it as auto name, that will be the name of the EForm. So it might be a little bit harder to find that information in the actual HTML. You can actually push measurements back into the eChart as well. So if you have a measurement field that rather than you're pulling that information into EForm, but you have an interactive EForm where you're typing in a measurement, you can do that by selecting this button here. And then you select which type of measurements you're adding back in. And again, whether it's going to be a value, date, or comment. So I'll collapse this. Then the next step is you can fine-tune your input fields. So sometimes it may be a little bit difficult to get the placement of these text boxes right the first time. I know I have a hard time with it. I always end up going into the HTML and modifying the pixel placement, but you can also do it right from within here. So you'll go to fine-tuning the input fields, and You'll have a list of your input fields. I'll actually add another one here just to make it more obvious what's going on. Let's just add a custom one. Oops. Let's just do one of these. Now it thinks that I'm using the same name twice. Where'd that go? There we go. Now, when you're fine-tuning the placement of these boxes, let's probably close all this stuff so I can actually see what's going on up here. Now, you can select the field that you want to move around, and if you shift left, you can slowly move it to the left, to the right. There's nudges, which is a little bit slower but more precise. And say you want to align two fields, though. What you'll do is you'll select the two fields, and let's say you want to align them on the left-hand side. You just click that. Now they're both aligned on the left, or you can do it on the right-hand side as well. Once you're done fine-tuning the page, you have a few more options. I wouldn't go into here because this is really just for some old compatibility issues. But you're going to load the HTML into a new window, and then you can save it from there, or you can just click the Save button right here, and that will save it, and it will show up in your list of uploaded EForms. So someone said, I know how to generate the EForm, but I don't know how to make it in the exact size. It always appears a little bit smaller than the actual size. I'm not sure if you're referring to when you print it or when you're creating a new one. When you are creating these new EForms and you're actually creating the image, you need to make sure that the width is 1500 pixels. It's very specific when you go into creating the EForm. It actually kind of talks about that. For portrait, the image should be 1500 pixels, and then it automatically gets resized to 750 on the screen. With landscape, it's a little bit different. Another question here is, when you set up the groups, are they for all patients or just individual charts? They're for all patients. So you set up the groups, and then any patient's chart you go into, there's going to be these different groups of EForms. Another question is, if we customize an EForm, now will it remain the same after the update, or will it have to be redone? So when you edit an EForm in the system, so you say you edit this one, and you make changes to it, what will happen is for any of the EForms that you previously created using this EForm, say you did one for a patient's chart, a lab requisition 2 weeks ago, nothing will change with those previously saved EForms. However, when you go to use this EForm with moving forward, it will use the version that you had updated to. So if you made a small change, anytime you use that EForm moving forward, it will have those changes that you made to it. But it doesn't affect anything that you saved prior to making the changes to the EForm. All right, does anyone have any more questions? So I have been recording this webinar, so we will be putting it up later. And we do plan on doing some future webinars on eForms and other topics. So if you hopefully got some use out of this webinar, maybe give us some suggestions for what you're interested in learning in the future. I'm not sure when we're going to be doing our next one yet, but we're hoping that we can go into more topics and go a little bit more deeper into how you can create your own eForms. Well, I got some more questions here. So there's a question here about printing. When printing the eForm, it becomes smaller than the actual size, even if you make sure it was the correct pixels. So there's a few different things that actually affect the printing out of an eForm, and this is something that I had quite a bit of problems with at first because you know, there's really no point on having such big margins around these eForms. So one of the first things to take a look at is your browser settings. So in Firefox, if you go to your browser, and I'm just going to have to remember how to do this, you go to Print, and then you go to Page Setup. And in the Page Setup, you're going to go to Margins and Header Footer. And what I've done is I've set all of this to 0. So I don't want any margin at all. Usually this is set something it's gonna add to the margin that's already being placed in an eForm. So just set that to 0. Another common thing is that when people are printing out their eForms, they have the website address getting printed at the top. You have date stamps. That's all controlled here as well, where it says headers and footers. There's all these little boxes where you can add information onto anything you're printing. So if you don't want any extra information getting printed onto your eForm, you'll set these to all blank. All right, so I think that's going to be the conclusion of the webinar. I don't see any more questions. And I know, yeah, maybe the HTML part was a little bit confusing for people. I kind of just went into that because I had a little bit more time than I thought I would. I do plan on going into more detailed eForm tutorial going into the HTML, and hopefully, given enough time, it will be easier to understand that part. Once you understand the basics of HTML, it really does help in customizing your eForms, and you know, it's not too difficult to do. You just gotta understand those basic parts, but you don't need to understand everything in there. I definitely don't. Most of the JavaScript goes above my head, but it is something that I think you know, people do know how to do. They're going to get a lot more use out of their eForms. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see some of you at our next eForm session. It sounds like I'm definitely struggling because I don't know what I'm going from to next. Like, I'm all trying to just done it so many times that I'm like, okay, I'm going to this next, this next, this next. It sounds like. Okay. You just start thinking a lot of people get nervous when they are presenting something and they just like, without stopping and pausing and thinking. Oh, okay. And just keep going. And I do that. It was good. Stop and pause and stop and pause. Yep. Cool. A lot of the questions that I think. Oh, we got 8. Most half of the video. I mean, yeah, there we go. Yeah. Cool. And that went a lot faster. I was like, oh, I started going to each now. I looked at the time. I tried to go my fingers in. Okay. The HTML, the form that you used there. It was terrible. I was like, oh my god, I picked like the worst one. It's like still format and first block. Yeah, that was really terrible. I thought it was easy. Like, well, I'm pretty sure I've done this a lot of times. And I like looked at it like, oh my god, this is what it's actually a comedy. Really, really. You have to see it on every single. And And it gets everything really quickly instead of just having the different to check. You might maybe reach out with an old form generator or something like that on that. Yeah. But
yeah, hopefully, make them a little less here and then next time and show them that helps.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Definitely like half an hour went by a lot quicker than I was expecting.
So, what happens with the video now?
I have no idea. So, I recorded.
People, I like